everyone, and welcome back to the Fiction Author Business School podcast. I'm going to first start by apologizing. My voice is a little bit squeaky today. I'm not sure why. Well, I guess I kind of am. I have some people in the family that are sick, and I'm really, truly not sick. I don't feel sick, but my voice is a little bit iffy, so I'll do my best to come through strongly for you. As we get started, welcome back if you have listened to lots of episodes, and welcome for the first time if you're new. As we start out this episode, I've just noticed a lot of new listeners. So if you're new to the podcast, I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for being here. And I just wanted to do a quick introduction of myself and what I teach for those of you who may not know me very well yet. My name is Laisel Hill, and I am a USA Today bestselling author. I write over 4 different genres, so I've definitely been around the block a few times when it comes to this fiction writing thing that we all love so much. When it comes to what I teach, though, I teach something that's a little different than most other people teach, all right? I teach authors how to write deeply emotional stories. And that's because only deeply cathartic stories will become bestsellers. Notice how there are not many, and that's an exaggeration, there are not any dictionaries or encyclopedias that make the bestseller list. They have really good information, so why aren't they bestsellers? Well, because they don't evoke emotion. That's why. That's the whole reason right there. And the sooner you understand that, the better your writing will be. So I teach authors to write deeply emotional stories, and how we do that is through principles of energetics, human transformational psychology, and subconscious creativity. Now, those are some really big words, but don't worry about them too much. I talk about them all the time. It's just about tapping into your subconscious mind, to use your unique creativity, and then also the way that human beings grow and change. So as we enter this new year, and I think it's going to be an exciting and prosperous one for everybody, I invite you to ponder a question, and to do so really seriously. Do you want to uplevel your fiction writing in 2025? And maybe we should try to define the word uplevel. Well, obviously, there's not one universal definition of what it is. It just depends on where you are in your writing journey. So take a minute for me and think about what your next big step is that you want to accomplish in your journey. It might be finally finishing that first manuscript, or it might be that it's finished, but you need to get it into shape for publishing, editing and all of that. Maybe it's just having the courage to actually hit publish for the first time. Or maybe you already have some books under your belt, but you're struggling to finish your next project. Or maybe your goal is more of a marketing and sales goal, or to grow your email list. Whatever your goal is, I want you to envision it. And I want you to ask yourself what you're prepared to do in 2025 to make this goal a reality. So I can give you a couple of mine. I want to write 3 to 4 books this year. I've been a 1-book-a-year author for the last several years now, and I'm hoping to uplevel that this year. That would be my uplevel, is to write more than 1 book and publish more than 1 book this year. It's also a little bit difficult for me right now because, well, for one thing, I am building out courses for authors, so that obviously takes time. But the other thing is that the books I'm writing are actually very, very long. They are dragon fantasy, think Game of Thrones or Brandon Sanderson length books. So obviously, it's a lot harder to write 3 or 4 of those than to write 3 or 4 novellas. But we're going to see how it goes. That's what I'm intending to do. So at the very least, I'm going to need to make sure that I'm scheduling correctly and blocking time to prioritize my writing, right? That's something we all need to do. But here's the thing. When I say I'm going to give you tips on how to uplevel your writing and accomplish your writing goals this year, I'm really not the person who's going to talk about 3D things like time blocking and setting up the perfect writing space and eliminating distractions. All of those things are great and they're very important, but you can get that advice from absolutely anyone. Even people who are not in the fiction writing space, give that advice to help you reach your goals. But I don't think that most of you probably need to hear that again. All of us know that we should do those things, and many of us probably already do. So the question is, what do you do when you've taken all of the industry standard advice, set those things up for yourself, and you still have a hard time buckling down and finishing your writing? Like, you just can't get or keep yourself in the right headspace. Well, this is why I entitled this episode, Keys for Upleveling Your Fiction Writing in 2025. Because here, in this year of 2025, things are a little bit different. And don't get me wrong, these principles aren't necessarily something that are brand new to writing in 2025. They've always been true. But in the mainstream, we're kind of rediscovering what they are and why they work for the first time in a long time, okay? In the past, we've always heard advice like, just start writing and write one book and then write another book and keep going. Eventually one of them will be profitable. And just keep trying. You just have to discipline yourself. And perhaps my favorite, one day the stars will align and your book will hit it big. This advice is not the best. Raise your hand for me, either physically or mentally, if you've ever heard and or followed any of this type of advice before. I know I have. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with this kind of advice. It's always well-meaning by the people who give it. But imagine for a moment that you're going to medical school and this is the advice that you're being given. Just start the operation. You'll figure it out. Do one operation and then do another one and keep going, and eventually one of your patients will live. Can you imagine, right? Just keep trying. You just have to discipline yourself. And one day the stars will align and you'll do the operation right and your patient will be okay. Until then, just keep trying. All right, now, granted, it's a little bit different because a badly written novel is not going to kill anybody. I understand that there's a big difference there, but my point is, if we want to do something well and do it efficiently, you really do need specifics to know how to do it. You need some training, not just this 1-800 dial a prayer and hope that the Amazon gods hear it, okay? That's not a marketing plan. So that's one reason you may have had trouble succeeding in the past. A lot of the writing advice is either very generic or it's obvious that people don't really know the answer or they don't know how to give an answer in a detailed way. So they just say, oh, just keep going. You'll figure it out. And while I do think you should keep going, I think you should always persevere. That's not the best way to learn anything, right? If you want to hear any more on this specific topic about these kinds of advice, you can check out episode 185, which is called Have You Followed All the Great Advice and It's Still Not Working For You? Try this. Or more recently, episode 246, where I did three reasons you're struggling to finish your first draft, and 247, why online writing advice will never create a bestseller. Okay, so this is something I've talked about a lot. But moving on, another reason that you may have had trouble succeeding before is that writing, unlike many other industries that may be more physical, is very cerebral. And of course you know that. You know that writing, creativity, crafting our stories and our characters, it all happens in our head. If the bulk of creation of something, anything, takes place in the brain, then you need to employ more than just physical means to support yourself in that creation. All right, let me explain and then I'll say that again. If you're doing something very physical, like let's say you're working with your hands, you're creating a craft or working with wood or, cooking or something, those are all very physical things and you're creating a physical product. So it's going to be most important. Of course, you need to know, the basic steps still of what you're doing, but once you do know them, it's going to be most important to create an environment that is going to support you in your creation. But what we create when we're writing novels is not physical. I mean, sure, eventually we'll have a book that can be printed, but the actual story itself, it happens in your imagination, and when your readers are reading it, for the most part, it's happening in their imagination. So that's why it's a little bit illogical for us just to say, oh, well, we just need a better writing space and then we'll be able to get our writing done. I mean, the writing space is important. It's not something we should skip over, but it's also not the end-all be-all for good, I don't know, I hate to use the word mental health, but we need to have an efficient writing space in our own brain, not just in the physical 3D. We need to do it energetically as well. So let me say that again. If the bulk creation of something takes place in the brain, then you need to employ more than just physical means to support yourself in that creation. So that's another reason that you may have a hard time buckling down to get your writing done. So I've kind of told you what the issues are. Let's get on to those keys that you're going to need to succeed in 2025. The first is to learn to tap into your subconscious creativity. Now, this is something that I talk about a lot. If you've never heard me talk about it before, trust me, you will. But this is exactly what I mean when I say that some of this is becoming very mainstream in 2025. Things that we didn't know, or at least the vast majority of people didn't know 15, 20, 30 years ago, are now becoming common knowledge, all right? What things are housed in your in your subconscious mind, excuse me. Your subconscious mind houses your creativity, your emotion, and your spirit. And what is fiction made up of? Well, creativity and emotion, two of the three, right? So you need to learn to tap directly into that and not try to force your story onto the page using your conscious and logical mind. Now, this all sounds very, sciencey in a way, but it's actually very, very simple to learn, okay? It's just a small mind shift that will really, really help you. But basically what this means is not forcing yourself to come up with ideas, not trying to force your story into or out from a template. You need to talk to your unique subconscious and let the ideas flow from there. And the basic ways to do this include meditation, journaling, plenty more. I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail about this here because I talk about it a lot on other episodes, but I will continue to talk about it. And it's something that I think is more important for fiction authors than for a lot of other people who are in other industries, okay? Because our writing is so cerebral, we need to be able to leverage our subconscious minds. And if you've never even attempted to do that before, that's why sometimes coming up with your fiction writing feels like pulling teeth, okay? Once you tap into your subconscious mind and get the ideas flowing, it's so much easier, okay? If you want to hear more about this, like I say, I talk about it a lot, so there are 50 possible episodes I could refer you to, but a good one that's pretty recent is 243, which is called Pantsing, Plotting, and the Invisible Aspects of Story. The second key I'm going to talk about is learning the true nature of story. Now, despite what I said about not forcing your story into or out of a template, I'm actually not against templates, okay? You just have to learn how to use them correctly and not use them as a crutch. Now, most of you, whether you know it or not, approach your fiction writing from the point of view of a reader. And you might be thinking, well, what's wrong with that? Of course I approach it from the point of view of a reader. I love stories. I love to read stories, and therefore I want to write one. So, of course, right? But I want you to consider something. Let's say we're talking about someone who wants to become a math teacher. There's learning math, the concept that they actually have to teach, but then there's also learning to teach math, right? And that's kind of a whole other up level. Students, once they've mastered a concept, sure, they can teach it to one another or to themselves, but learning to be a teacher, learning to present something in a way that will help people learn it is a skill set above that. An example of this is think about how boring some textbooks can be. Some of them are written pretty well and pretty good, and you read pretty seamlessly, and you actually have fun reading from them and learning from them. But we've all seen that textbook, whether in high school or college or whatever, that's just boring and clunky and so hard to stay in and read, and your teacher assigns you a chapter and you want to kill yourself rather than read that chapter, right? It's just about learning to teach. So the same thing is true with your writing. Learning to love stories from reading them, and even wanting to write one because of your love of reading, is one thing. But learning to write a story is a higher skill set than that of simply reading one. And if you truly want to master it, you need to understand more about the nature of story than the average reader does. Story, it turns out, is always based, or should always be based, on human transformational psychology. And what is that? It simply means the way in which human beings grow and change. So it's like the psychological and emotional steps that every human being goes through in order to change and grow. And if you write your stories using THP as a basic template, your stories are going to land so much more emotionally with readers. It's probably going to blow your mind. But what most authors do is they don't take this into account. They don't understand the true nature of story and what it should be. They don't understand the real reasons that readers read novels. And they just kind of willy-nilly string their story together, and then they don't understand why readers aren't falling in love with it. But it's because they're not being intentional about these things. And it makes all the difference in how your story lands, how much your readers love your story, and ultimately how much money you're going to make on royalties. Okay? If this is something you want to learn more about, try episode 242, which is called The Real Reason That Readers Buy Books, or 245, Top 4 Reasons to Use Transformational Human Psychology to Write Your Fiction. The next key I want to talk about is another energetic one. Learn to quiet your mind and center your heart. Now, this can be used and should be used for all goals and all parts of your life, but again, it's especially important for your writing. When you can't buckle down and get your writing done, it's most likely because your mind is not quiet. And again, because most of your fiction creativity is happening inside your subconscious mind, you need to support your own mind, not just your physical body, in getting the writing done. So here's the thing. Also coming from your subconscious mind is your own personal intuition. And that intuition can and 100% will tell you what is best for your story. But in order to hear it, you really do have to learn to listen for it. And that means you have to get quiet, you have to learn to recognize it, and you have to trust it. Now, that's the kind of thing that takes practice. But if you can learn to do this, it's really very simple. The next time, I'm going to challenge you guys to do this and just see what happens, right? The next time that you have a question about your story, so it might be that you have no idea what comes next, or maybe you've got a couple of ideas and you can't choose between them. Doesn't matter. Just the next time you're trying to figure something out about your plot or one of your characters, whatever it is. I want you to get really quiet. Go into sort of a meditative state of mind, which just means relax your body. Yes, turn off all distractions. You can listen to meditative music if you want, and just really, really quiet yourself, regulate your nervous system, slow down your breathing and your heart rate. And then I want you to ask yourself, what would be the best option for, this problem you're having with your story? What most people don't realize is that the thoughts that come into your mind are more than likely your intuition. And we tend to second guess that. We tend to say, oh, that wasn't intuition. That wasn't an answer like from the divine. That was just me thinking that. And it could be, but most often, I'd say 90+% of the time, that is your intuition giving you an answer. And it very well may be something you already thought of and rejected. So start trying to leverage your own intuition, learn to quiet your mind and center your heart, and I promise you, it will help you work through your writing problems, and it will make you more creative, all right? If you want to learn more about this, you can try episode 238, Why You Need Energetics to Succeed as a Fiction Writer, or 244, Why You Should Use Emotion and Belief Alignment to Write Your Fiction. And the fifth key that I'm going to talk about, the fourth key, is just plan. Plan. Now, I know, a lot of you are pantsers and you don't like the idea of planning out your story. And I completely understand that, and I do completely support it. But there are ways to plan and still pants your story. I'm not talking about doing a detailed outline if you don't want one. I'm not talking about doing anything that's going to make it harder for you to write. But what happens is, first of all, across the board, planning is king, even among fiction writers. I know that there are even some famous fiction writers who are famous pantsers, and that's perfectly okay. But what I would submit is that they do a lot of the planning in their head. I don't think it's possible to 100% be a pantser. I mean, you're keeping a lot of the details in your head when you do that. But pretty much across the board, what I see is that authors tend to pants their first book, maybe even their first handful of books. But what they do is they eventually get to a point where they become aware of storycraft, and they become aware of things that readers respond to. And the more seasoned the author, the more planning that they do, because they recognize that it's going to make them more successful. So the sooner that you get on board with that and start planning, not in a way that stifles your creativity, but in a way that will help you connect more deeply with your readers and hence give you more success, the better, right? The other thing is that, and I know this is a bit of a sensitive subject, but I'm not sure I believe that anyone was born to pants and can't do it any other way. If you want to do it that way because you prefer to do it that way, then more power to you. But like I said, even people who are hardcore pantsers, I actually think that they do keep outlines, just, vague outlines, but they keep them in their head. And it's because they feel like as soon as they put it down on paper, then it gets ruined, or they rebel against their own outline and don't want to write it. And I get that. I totally understand. Like, that's not at all uncommon. But they're still keeping an outline. So when people say, I'm just a pantser, there's nothing I can do about it, I'm always a little bit skeptical of that, because most people, don't get me wrong, I'm sure you've tried to outline before and it hasn't worked. So people say that too. No, I tried to outline and I couldn't write that way. Okay, I believe you. But chances are you weren't outlining in quite the right way. You probably haven't done it the way that I teach to do it, because the way I do it is to teach you to tap into your subconscious mind, and that's completely different than the way that you've tried to outline before. So I want you to think of an example of, like, doing a pull-up, for example. What if someone tried to do a pull-up and couldn't do it, right? They were too weak, they were too flabby, it just wasn't working. And so they give up and they say, you know what, I just don't have that type of body, I'm not made to do a pull-up. Wouldn't you kind of chuckle at them and be like, well, I get that you can't do it right now, but it's because you've never been taught how to do one, and it takes practice. The more you do it, the better you'll become. And if you continue getting stronger, then eventually you'll be able to do one, right? Kind of the same thing with storycraft and planning, all right? So even if you want to mostly do pantsing, that's fine. But get on board with doing a little bit of planning, whatever you can do, so that you're just being more efficient in your writing and intentionally are able to connect with your readers on a deeper level. That's really what our goal is, to serve our readers, because the more we serve our readers, the more they will be willing to trade their hard-earned money for our stories. Okay, so in terms of creating your goals for this year, this is what I would recommend for you to do. Grab a pen and paper if you can to write these down. If you're writing or jogging or something, you can come back to it later. Number one, I want you to write down what your writing goals are. Obviously, getting really clear on them and setting an intention is very important. Number two, what I want you to do is quiet your mind and center your heart, just like I talked about. Just get really quiet, really relaxed, so that you're kind of in a meditative state going into yourself. And I want you then to create a 5-sensory imaginary experience. What I mean by that is I want you to think about what it is going to look like, what you are going to be doing on the day after you achieve your goal. So let's say, okay, if I'm doing this for myself, I want to write 3 or 4 books this year and get them published. So let's say I publish the 4th one in November of 2025. And I'll just come up with an arbitrary date because I have no idea exactly when I would be publishing it. But let's say I published it November 5th. I'm going to create an imaginary experience about what my life will look like, what my day will look like on November 6th, after I have just finished achieving my goal. Now, the goal in doing this is that you need to sort of jump the timeline. You're going to put yourself in the timeline after you've already accomplished this. So you need to use all 5 of the senses to create this imaginary experience so that it feels very real. So close your eyes and imagine what you would be doing. If it was me, I might say something like, I'm sitting at my desk. I have my favorite drink in hand. I'm working on my next chapter. And then you're going to say, what do I see? What do I smell? What do I feel? What do I taste? So I would say something like, and try to make these things pertain either to the experience or to the goal or to both. So what do I see on that day? I could say something a little bit generic, like I see my screen, I see my keyboard, but I would rather say I see my Amazon page and that these 4 books are all on sale because I've gotten them done and published. What do I smell? I smell probably something in my home, but something that signifies that I've reached my goal. Like I smell my significant other making my favorite meal because it's a celebratory dinner that he's doing for me in order to celebrate that I published my last book that I wanted to this year. What do I taste? Well, I have my favorite drink in hand, so I would probably taste that. What do I feel? You could talk about the seat you're sitting on. You could talk about, because this is, again, this is five senses. It's not what do I feel emotionally yet. It's what do I feel physically, you know? Am I touching my keyboard? Am I holding my cup? Am I, maybe I feel the dinner that's in front of me, the fork that I'm using to eat my favorite dinner because it's celebratory, you know, all of that. So go through all of the five senses. Then I do also want you to think about your emotions. How do you feel having accomplished this? I feel proud of myself. I feel empowered. I feel accomplished. I feel glad that I got this done, and think about those emotions, okay? And keep imagining that for a few minutes until it feels very real and like a really positive 10-level experience, okay? Then you're gonna imagine that you wrap that whole experience, that whole scene that you just created in white light and put it in your heart chakra, okay? That's, if you don't know what that is, it's just around your heart where most people feel their emotions, around your chest. And say to yourself, this is how I would like things to be this year. And then just imagine that experience becoming a part of you. This is basically a meditative practice. And whatever your goals are this year, I want you to do this with each of them. And then after that, you don't have to worry about it. You just need to work toward it, right? So that is what I have for you today. Let me do a quick recap here. The keys that you'll need to succeed at fiction writing in 2025 are learning to tap into your subconscious creativity, learning the true nature of story, learning to quiet your mind and center your heart, and get on board with doing at least a little bit of planning. And if you stick with me and my podcast, I will talk about these more. I will be teaching them more, so I can help you out with that. In terms of what I want you to do for your goals, I'll go through this list one more time. Number 1, write down what the goal is. Number 2, quiet your mind and center your heart. Number 3, create a 5-sensory imaginary experience. Number 4, wrap that experience in white light and place it in your heart chakra. Number 5, say to yourself, this is how I would like things to be this year. And number 6, imagine that experience becoming a part of you. All right? Guys, whatever your goals are this year, I wish you the best of luck with them. And actually, do you know that luck isn't, it's not that it isn't a thing, it is, but it's not what people think it is. Most people see luck as being completely arbitrary and a random chance sort of thing. And that's definitely not the case. This is a concept I learned from Michael Beckwith, if you know who he is. But luck stands for living under karmic knowledge. And what that means is that those who are confident, who are prepared, who have done the work, and who have their energy aligned, they get all the luck. All right? Because they are living under karmic knowledge. And luck is not a chance thing. So if you want to make yourself lucky, then you've got to be willing to do the work. And you've got to be willing to align your energy, and you've got to be willing to get yourself prepared. And confidence is part of it. And I know it's hard to be confident in your writing, and most people don't think of confidence as being something that you need in order to be successful at selling writing. You don't need confidence to upload a story to Amazon, that's for sure. You can upload anything you want at any time. But if you want that story to sell, yeah, you'd better be confident in what you've written. You better be confident because you know what you've written is good, it is well edited, and it will land emotionally with readers. If you don't know those things, then it's pretty darn hard to be confident. And without that confidence, you're going to have a hard time getting sales, okay? That's all I'm saying. I wish you luck, but I wish you the kind of luck that helps you live under cosmic knowledge. Anyway, I hope and wish and manifest for you to have the biggest fiction writing up level ever. But I also hope that it comes easily and naturally for you and doesn't stress you out, because that's not helpful. We want to enjoy what we're doing and not be stressed about it, or we actually could do more damage than good when it comes to helping ourselves out, right? So to that end, I am teaching a workshop at the end of January. It's the third week in January, the 20th through the 23rd. It's called How to Craft Fiction Characters That Jump Off the Page Without Guessing, Wasting Time, or Banging Your Head Against the Wall. I have taught this workshop before, and it always goes over very well. I've tweaked it a little bit and kind of streamlined it and hopefully made it better. So if it's one that you feel would be advantageous to you, learn to write more three-dimensional characters, or if you've wanted to attend before and there was a scheduling conflict, now is the time. Like I said, it's the 20th through the 23rd. You can, I will put the link to it in the show notes. I don't have a bit.ly link for it, so it's kind of long. But just click on that and you can register for it, and hopefully I will see you there. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2025, and let's go out and get some awesome stories written. See you soon, guys.